data mining stuff and say, why is it that privacy is disappearing on such a large scale so quickly, and we aren't having like an uproar about it as a society? And the reason, one, big companies benefit. Companies with the data. The data, Facebook, Google, Apple, these are the people who are benefiting from this. So they are both designing the programs and also benefiting from them. They're also the ones who have the technical knowledge and expertise to know what exactly is happening. So you've got the people who are most aware of what's happening and best able to protect your privacy, who actively have a reason to not want to protect your privacy. Because the less privacy you have, the more money they make. So you've got this fundamental pull. So 2, no real laws, because privacy laws in USA are ancient. What are the main 2 privacy bits of legal protection you have on the privacy front in the United States? Does anyone know?
The Fifth Amendment.
That's one of them. Yep.
Is that the 5th? You said the 5th?
Yeah.
And the 3rd?
I think it's the 4th.
Oh, the 4th?
But yeah, 4th and 5th Amendments. When did these come about?
A long time.
Yeah, we're talking the late 1700s. The 4th Amendment, I can never remember which one's which. One of these is search and seizure, so one of these is to look at my stuff, you have to have a warrant. That's 4, and then what's 5?
I believe
Plead the 5th, it's you have the right not to testify against yourself in court. So they cannot force you to say anything which goes against yourself. So these are the main privacy laws that we have in this country. These are ancient and they were not designed for modern times. So here's one way in which these laws are really not designed for modern technology. So this right here, if you have one of these, which most of you do, how much of your life can be accessed if somebody unlocked this? Yeah, I could get so much information, anyone could get so much information. If you are arrested by a police officer when you're texting and you lock your phone, odds are, if you were doing something nefarious, the cop would want access to that phone. And even if you weren't, you don't really want this cop who you don't know digging around in your phone. So, can the cop make you unlock your phone?
No.
Why not?
Because
By the way, you're both right and you're wrong. The answer is it depends. And the reason, so what determines whether the cop can make you unlock your phone or not?
like the attitude.
reasonable suspicion.
So part of it is reasonable suspicion,
Yeah.
but does anyone know?
Consent.
If you saw something that.
So part of it is consent. If you give him consent,
Always.
he or she is allowed to open your phone. But he cannot, if you don't want to open the phone, he or she cannot make you. Unless what? Here's the answer. Is your phone password protected or is it thumbprint read protected?
Oh.
If it's password protected only, can the cop make you open it?
No.
No, because it counts as pleading the fifth. The cop would ask you for your information, and you can choose, because it's a verbal mental activity, to say, no, you need a warrant. And no, I will not go against myself. If you want to access this, you need a warrant and you need somebody to crack it. I do not have to testify against myself. If it's thumbprint protected, the cop can make you unlock it.
Yep.
Why? Because it's not pleading the fifth, because you don't have to say anything to unlock it. It is a visible, counted as public piece of biometric data. So if the cop tells you you must unlock your phone and it has thumbprint access, you have to unlock it. And if you aren't, you are resisting. This is a way, does this make any sense to any of you?
No.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of common sense, does this make sense?
No. It isn't.
No, common sense, it makes no sense.
I agree.
The fact is, if your phone isn't a password, a cop can't make you open it, but thumbprint or face scan he or she
Sounds like one
can,
of
that
those-
seems crazy.
one of those
But
loopholes.
legally, because of the way the law is written, it still applies.
What if like you use the wrong thumb and then you do it so many times that the phone it's like, oh, we won't let you in.
So I had a student a few semesters ago who was like, he's probably one of the most knowledgeable in terms of hacking and everything else I've ever had, who had it set up on his phone that if you used one thumb, it unlocked it, but if you used the other one, it cleared the whole thing. So that's something you can do. The cop can force you to unlock it, but you can have a backup mechanism to delete it. But if you don't have that and the cop says unlock it, you have to. If you don't have your thumbprint, you don't have to. Why? Because the way the law was written was not anticipating we would have technology that can unlock things on biometric data.
What about Face ID?
Also,
so it could go
also
on my
applies.
eyes.
Anything that they don't have to ask you about. If it's something, basically, a good test is, could somebody unlock your phone even if you were unconscious? If yes, then they can make you do it. If no, then not. So anything like password, anything that you would have to talk to them about, no. But anything in which they could just look at your face, or use your thumb, or use your eye, yes, they can make you.
So would an example, Professor, of data mining be if Apple, Steve Jobs, and the police were interacting about ways to make the new iPhone?
Absolutely. And if they then took it and said, oh, the new iPhone, one thing we care about is the ability to track down potential criminals. And we find that if you look over a huge data set, people who are likely to buy an iPhone 3 years old with older technology are more likely to be criminals. Here's a list of them. That would be a case of data mining. You take data, you run correlations, and then you can do it. And so all of this can go together with stuff we talked about before. Because data gathering is so much easier, the data sets are much larger. Because data merging is so easily, you can combine giant data sets together, and you can have people who didn't used to talk to each other put them together. And then because we have computers, you can run and get correlations and algorithms, and then make decisions entirely based on these computer scoring systems. Or, so this sort of case in which Steve Jobs and like the cops are just talking and exchanging stuff, that's data merging. But if you then take the merged data and run algorithms over it, or run correlational studies and get new information, but which is then used to predict other things, then you're mining the data and using those golden nuggets to make a ton of money. What are some other worries that we have? So we've got these old laws. The big companies are the ones who are benefiting. And on top of this, because they have the largest data sets and the best computers, we're at a point in which the amount of information possessed by private companies is beyond anything that's ever happened in human history before. The amount of information that is in the world these days stored on computers that you can process is orders of magnitude more than things like the amount of information that gets produced on YouTube every year is like more information than was written down before the year 0 put together. Like if you take just the YouTube videos put on YouTube in 1 year, we're talking more writing than was written before the year 0. That is 6.5 billion years of information compared to 1 year of YouTube. We're talking huge, huge, huge amounts of information. And because if you have the servers to store it and the machines to process it, you have control and information that nobody else can get access to on a scale beyond anything. Just think about how much information Google has on you and everyone else and all your patterns and all the patterns amongst the patterns that you might not even know are there. And that is something that we've never had before. Because when you vote in the election, there's a sense in which you, at least in theory, have some control over this information. Google is a private company who has to obey by law, but there's still a sense in which they aren't somebody, you don't choose the Google chairperson like you, in theory, choose the president. I mean, again, we're influenced in many ways, but you have more control over who the president of the United States is than who Google's CEO is. And yet Google probably has just as much information on you, if not more, than the president does. And by the president, I mean like the entirety of the government organization, which is like a fundamentally different world than we have ever encountered before. Any other worries about privacy? How else Why else is privacy so shot? Why is it that we have so little when we want it so bad?
So like article talk about like the sense of border, right? Imagine a country have a border, but like
Yeah.
your computer doesn't have that.
Here's the final one, is a major issue now is because all the information is in one place, stored on computers, how easy, so imagine Google doesn't do anything you're uncomfortable with. They just store the data, never process it. Imagine the government data, never do anything you're uncomfortable with. Everyone has all the data, they process it, but nothing happens. What's still the issue for privacy? Where's all the data that Google has? Where does it live?
Database.
In the cloud.
Cloud.
Where is the cloud? How do you access the cloud? Where can you access the cloud from?
Anywhere.
Anywhere in the world. It's connected to a server, which is actually who knows where. They know, we don't. But you don't need to be anywhere near the cloud to get into the cloud. And if you break into the cloud, why did people in the old days, here's like the basic idea. Why is it that when you go into old movies and old time stories, what was the main thing people were robbing? Banks. Why do you rob a bank as opposed to like your neighbor?
That's where all the money is.
That's where all the money is. You've got all of it stored in one place. The cloud is a bank of information. If you break into the cloud, the amount of information you can steal is beyond anything that you can get from any individual computer. So if you manage to break in, the amount of information that is there to be taken and siphoned off is incredibly high. So because it's all stored in one place or by one company, it also means that if anyone hacks in or breaks through their security, the amount of information that can be gathered by somebody who does not have your best intentions in mind is incredibly high. So that's the other issue, is security in cyber is crap. Cybersecurity is incredibly hard and incredibly crappy. And so here's the last thing with privacy. It's not just that there's so much information out there that people have, it's also that there's no guarantee that your private information relative to one person is going to stay private. Because just because your hospital information is in a hospital doesn't mean it's going to stay in that hospital. Because hospitals have computers, and you know who are really bad at knowing how to keep their computer system safe? Who spends a lot of time thinking about really hard things and don't get a ton of sleep, or they're way too busy doing things like, you know, keeping people alive? Doctors. Hospitals have notoriously terrible cybersecurity. There's a reason why doctors' offices are one of the main places that get attacked for ransomware attacks. Because, yeah, hospitals are constantly getting attacked with ransomware, and we'll be talking about that more in a minute. But yeah, this is the basic idea, is you are now working in a world in which security is less and less, and the payoffs are more and more and more and more. So, we are going to take our break now. We're going to have to make it a 10-minute break instead of the usual 15 because I ran a little long. So come back at 12:30. No, we can make it 12:35. 12:35, and then we will move over to security, which is our little transition from privacy to security. All right, come back in like 12 to 15 minutes.